At 16, a simple hunting trip turned into the most chilling experience of my life, trapped in the dark with a looming, unexplainable figure. My story isn't just a hunt, it's a fight for survival. Join me, my father, and my cousin in the eerie silence of northern Michigan's winters, where the unknown stalks just beyond the light. The forest was a still life painting. Trees like silent sentinels guarding the secrets of the wild. My name is Rachel, I'm 16. My father introduced me to the art of hunting from the age of 14. I'm a young hunter, my heart brimming with the thrill of the chase, yet unaware that today, the forest would whisper a tale of its own. During my inaugural deer hunting season alongside my dad and cousin, I was positioned in a hunting blind 2 miles due south of my father's post, which in turn was 9 miles southwest from our base camp. We journeyed most of the way on a quad bike, stopping 100 yards short of his lookout, from which I trekked the remaining distance to my own spot. The Michigan winter was a beast of beauty. Its cold bites were sharp, but its snowy blanket was a serene sight. I nestled in my blind. The canvas walls, my temporary fortress. My rifle, a .243 with a dash of pink camo, lay across my lap, a contrast to the earthy tones around me. Time ticked away, and as the sun began its descent, I started to pack up, my youthful optimism dimming with the light. The crisp snap of a twig was the first act of an unseen play. I froze, ears straining, a hopeful gaze piercing through the thicket. The rustle of leaves followed, stirring the silence. A deer, perhaps, but the forest held its breath, and after a minute, my excitement fizzled out. Probably just a squirrel, I muttered, my voice a stranger in the quiet. With the zipper's final seal, I shouldered my gear, leaving the blind's refuge. I began walking toward my father's location. A path, freshly carved through the leaves, caught my eye. Too wide, too deliberate for the delicate steps of a deer. A shiver ran down my spine, a prelude to fear. It could be a bear, I thought. The forest canopy, a barrier to the sky, ushered in darkness prematurely. I hastened my steps, my breath forming ghostly puffs in the air. A mile to safety, a mile to my father. Yet, as the first howl of the night cut through the silence, my heart stopped. It sounded like the scream of a bear being brutally quartered by a blade. Coming from a distance of about 150 meters, it was a sound of agony, a creature in distress, or so I hoped. Panic is a wild creature. It seized me, urging my legs to flee. The woods were a blur, my lamp a feeble beacon against the encroaching night. I stumbled, the weight of my rifle now a lifeline rather than a burden. Then, a silence more terrifying than the ghastly cries ensued. I was alone in the dark, but for how long? The whispers of the forest grew louder in my mind, each leaf crunch a potential harbinger of my end. The forest's darkness was not just an absence of light, but a presence that felt alive, breathing a cold, malicious breath down my neck. With each step, the shadows seemed to stretch, reaching out like fingers, eager to snatch at my coat, my fear heightening with the quickening beat of my heart. The once familiar trees now loomed like giants, their branches clawing at the dimming sky. A foreign path unraveled before me, one not taken by any hunter I knew. It was an imprint of something sinister, a trail left by an entity unknown. I couldn't help but feel it was for me, a guide to an uninvited dance with dread. My breaths came out in ragged gasps, frost clinging to my lips as I pushed through the underbrush. There was no time for caution, for every whisper of wind through the leaves sounded like pursuit. Then, without warning, the same blood-curdling scream shattered the silence again. This time, it was louder and closer, a sound of such desperation that it seemed to freeze the very air. I ran. The forest was no longer a place of adventure, but a labyrinth of terror. Branches tore at my face. Unseen roots tried to claim my steps, but fear lent me speed. It was now completely dark. The moon, the only light, spinning quickly. My headlamp illuminated a horrifying, slender silhouette, roughly 50 yards distant. Its height nearly 10 feet, outlined against the moon. I instinctively dashed, clumsily preparing my rifle as I ran. By now, I had lost sight of the path. It was a game of hunter and hunted, but I bore no illusions which role I'd been cast in. My rifle, once a source of protection, now felt like little more than a metal talisman against a force I couldn't comprehend. The moon, a slice of silver in the sky, was my scant illumination, casting eerie shadows that twisted with my imagination. I dared not look back, for the tales of old had warned of the dangers that stalked those who wandered these woods after sundown. My heart threatened to burst. My legs ached, but the primal instinct to survive urged me forward. I was the prey in a chase I could neither see nor fully understand. Driven by the most primal of fears, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the dark, the fear of being caught. Just when I thought I might collapse under the weight of my own terror, the sight of Rabbit Road appeared. The familiar route leading back to my camp. The figure I had glimpsed before was now a fleeting shadow in the corner of my eye, a specter on the edge of reality. Reaching the road felt like a victory, but the feeling was fleeting. The forest was not done with me yet. The darkness held one more horror. Waiting in the silence, the moon hung heavy in the sky, a ghostly galleon adrift on a sea of stars, its pallid light casting the world in a monochrome palette. The trees, once benign, now stood as silent witnesses to my plight. Each step on Rabbit Road was a hesitant tap in the quiet night, my eyes darting, seeking refuge in the familiar. As the cabin's silhouette promised sanctuary, a sensation crawled over me, an instinctive knowledge that I was not alone. The air seemed to thicken, charged with a static of unspoken malice, and then it materialized. The dark beast was there, tall and thin, its proportions distorted. As if stretched by the hands of a cruel artist, it stood, backlit by the moon, a dark wraith in a world devoid of color. Its limbs were elongated, fingers tapering into the darkness, head tilted as if in curiosity or anticipation. My breath caught, my feet rooted to the spot, as if the very ground conspired to hold me for the specter. The figure was an affront to all things living, a thing that should not exist in the realm of flesh and blood. Yet, there it was, as real as the cold sweat that drenched my back. It was the embodiment of every whispered childhood fear, every nightmare that had ever danced in the corners of my mind. With a surge of desperate energy, I bolted, my legs carrying me with a terror-fueled strength I had not known I possessed. The rifle on my back was a forgotten burden, my entire being focused on the distance between myself and the cabin, the threshold between nightmare and safety. The specter did not chase. It did not need to. Its presence alone was enough to fray the edges of my sanity. As I stumbled onto the porch, my world began to spin, and my remaining strength ebbed away. I vomited before losing consciousness. The cold embrace of the ground was a strange comfort as the world faded to black. I awoke to the sound of the four-wheeler, my father's face swimming into view above me. The relief was a tangible thing. Yet even as I clung to it, the shadow of that moonlit specter lingered in my mind. The cabin was a bastion that night, a bulwark against the darkness. But even walls of wood and warmth could not banish the chill of what I had seen. I was plagued by sleeplessness for weeks following the incident, though some proposed it could have been a bear or a figment of my imagination. I'm sure of what I witnessed. It was a night that would live with me forever as the most terrifying experience of my life, a constant whisper in my ear that some things in this world are beyond understanding, beyond the light of day.